without any visuals, while the technical issues with furthest presentation are being resolved. I represent one of the oldest and the biggest Ukrainian registrars, and we've just heard about how it works in the rest of the world, about how it works in Belarus, where they have their own vision. And my presentation is devoted to this subject. Why? Why is it organized like this? Where does the idea of registrars, registries, ICANN come from? How come we do not have one single organization in the world that would be responsible for registering all domains for everyone, regardless of where they are, so that uniform rules would be applied, so that this could work on international level? How did we arrive at the situation that the majority of countries evolved, some sooner, some later? How did it happen that most countries evolved to arrive to this multi-tier system? My point of view is as follows. We've got to start from the basics. We first need to understand what a domain is, what it is exactly we are registering. So I am a registrar of what exactly? A domain is a certain object which the very word, and I talked about it many times before, the word can be easily decoded. A domain, as it is defined in Latin, is a plot of land which is temporarily given to somebody for their use. It is a plot of land. And here it is a plot of domain space, which you can use as a plot of land to construct, to build what you want. This is the only type of digital property on the internet. There is no other kind of digital property on the internet. Whatever you build on the net, if it's not linked in with your domain name, it is not yours. So if you want to build there, you absolutely must use something called a domain name. So what we're registering is our rights of ownership, of course, of a very certain type, but still ownership. And it is easy to understand how the system came into being. How do you register property rights in Ukraine in general? In fact, in any country, the system works pretty much the same. There is the Ministry of Justice that is operating a central registry. There is a company which does technical servicing of this registry, the technical administrator. And there are legal specialists who have access to this registry and make records, make entries in this registry. One registry holder would not be enough, because that will result in a monopoly, and there is no guarantee there will be no abuse, because there is no third party. The reason we go to a legal specialist, at a minimum to a notary, we need an independent party to verify their transaction between the two other parties. If there's a problem related to technical issues or legal issues or any modifications in the registry, we have this third independent party responsible for the integrity of our register, so that basically the third party is the verification party. Sometimes the escrow storage is another method of doing this. registrars code their data and put them into storage, into archives, if you will, that are kept there for increased reliability and stability of the system. So gradually, the entire world ended up with this system. This system is demonstrating its benefits. How do we know? By the number of registrations, because in fact the number of registrations in terms of domain names and the money that people are prepared to invest into them are a derivative of people's trust for the system. So on a world scale, we were able to create this trustworthy system, and we would like to thank ICANN for the auditing procedure for registrars. This is a very useful procedure, and it allows to point out that some registrars are violating certain rules and compromise the trust of the public for the entire system.
And I was trying to explain also why a registry can't be a registrar as well at the same time. A registrar can't, a registry cannot be on the board, on the management of a registry. I think ICANN used to have this as a requirement, and it's no longer the case. Well, it is difficult to oversee and to oversee compliance of this, but it used to be the case. This system is stable, it's understandable. Really, it's essentially, been in place for thousands of years. We haven't invented anything new. What's interesting is to try to think of what we can expect in the future. Will the system remain as is? If not, where is it going to go? And here, I do have a comment. Throughout human history, we have had to create these rights registration systems by an independent third party to guard against abuses. However, over the past several years, we ended up having a device, and a math theorem was proven about 15 years ago that distributed systems can exist. I'm sure you understand where I'm going. This is, of course, Bitcoin and systems like it. Those are systems that are based on a chain of transactions. I think actually that most of the registries that register anything, both in online, on the internet, but also any registry that records any transactions, even real estate or whatever it is. And over time, they will move into that transaction chain system, and they will move away from those multi-level systems that have existed up to now. But really, it also threatens the existence of existing registries because they just will become irrelevant and unneeded. It's just a matter of time. So in terms of technology, it is possible to create a worldwide identifier system that would function according to the blockchain principles without any sort of a central registration body, without ICANN, registries, registrars, just registrants. And I think that this is our future. It will probably entail not the exact same domain name system as we know it, but these types of number identifiers will be expanding, and I think this is more promising than the cryptocurrencies because things are much more complicated with cryptocurrencies. That's because the governments will be against those. But in terms of a number identifiers and systems that manage address spaces, I think those will start emerging. And I think that this system where registrar, registry are interacting and registrant in between, there is a reseller between that and the registrar, and then there is ICANN over everything else, and then the U.S. government up there above it all, the way it used to be, that, like I was saying before. Really, I think that the answer to my question from this morning that had to do when I asked why did they start with the why did they start with the internet and not with the Federal Reserve? I think I just answered it myself. I think that as centralized registration systems will be less and less trusted, we will end up in a new world where we'll be using distributed systems that are based on blockchains. That's all I have. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. I think you will need to come up to the mic because it will be difficult to run around the room. Alexander, I have deep respect for you, and I believe you made a very good presentation. Here's my question, however. You're completely right when you state that a domain is a type of property. However, would you agree if I said the following, that a domain and domain name are different things? A domain is information resources that you own, and the name is whatever you call it, right? And your property can have many names. And DNS, however, does not belong to, is not part of your what you own, right? It's not your property, correct? Correct. Now, this was the baseline for your statement. Here's what I wanted to clarify. First, I think it to be extremely dangerous, just like attempts at using IPv6 for tracking people. I think that we need to not confuse connectivity, addressing, and property. I think we're looking at a much more interesting future. A domain name as a proof of ownership of information resource is actually tied to the certificates. If you don't have that green lock in the browser field, then the question as to who it belongs to is open. Who owns this? So I think we need to look at number certificate systems and not at domain names. So what was your question? Oh, well, here's my question. Really, are you sure you didn't miss anything? No, I don't think I missed anything. Hello, Konstantin Kravchenko, hosting.ua. I bought a car for 1 year. 1 year later, if I don't extend it, it becomes a pumpkin. Am I still the owner? Like I said, these property rights are limited, but they're still property rights. The fact that they are limited in time, well, property is never absolute. Even your real estate rights, it's it's not real estate, it's royal estate. It's, it actually belongs to the king and not to you. Your property rights are limited by the sovereign and power. Same story here. There are no absolute property rights. It's just that in this case, the limitations are larger and stricter than rights to any other type of property. You can own land, but at the same time, you can be told, oh, well, this is needed for some other goals. Well, I think that this kind of looks more like a rental. But rent is also a type of property right. Okay, second question. You were drawing parallels to future distributed DNS systems and cryptocurrencies. No. I didn't use the word DNS. I was talking about a distributed system for rights registration. Correct. Registration of rights to some type of number identifiers. Right. So there is a certificate. We could put that in place, but a CDS. But I didn't say anything about DNS. This has nothing to do with DNS. But at this point, a registry that is governed in one place and the DNS are very much interrelated. Yes, they are. But a registrar registers those rights. Well, the system that I described, I can registrar, registry, registrant, reseller. That whole system is a system for recording your rights. And then based on those rights, you then have an ability to make modifications in some objects, including number NS, right? So this has to do with your rights. So your domain name, you can use a name server because your name is registered by you, right? But the green certificate, right, sign, it also confirms something. Well, that's a different level. It's a different area. So for example, you go see a notary, you buy a car, right? You register it. There's a transaction. The car is yours, correct? And so the certificate that's called, car maintenance log, which allows anyone to see that you are the owner instead of going to the notary every time. You're given that certificate after the fact. That log is given by the factory. Если можно,
that maybe the example of a car may not be the right metaphor to use. In that, I don't believe that the domain name is a property in the same way that you own a car. Maybe there's use rights involved, the same way that you have usage rights to your telephone number. It's a little bit different than your property rights to your home or to your car. I think the domain name should be viewed more like a phone number than like a house or land or car. Just perspective.
Dear
colleagues, I think that we have entered the path to the next session. We will be discussing these rights there. Alexander, I think, said a very important thing. He said that there is a mathematical proof that his proof of the fact that a general system that's been being built over years, this system, registrar, reseller, registrant, that it can be simplified all the way to just having one level, the level of the registrant. I think that's the only thing, the main thing, the thrust of what Alexander said. This is exactly what he said. And I think that's good. That is, and I believe that implementing this type of model, the probability of that is pretty low. However, who knows how the internet will look like in 3 years and in 10 years? And in any event, we do need to be ready for that eventuality. And so there are bridges from this statement to most of the sessions we had, including what the government should be doing here and security, etc. And actually, the issue of legal issues is the subject of the next session. Well, as a moderator, I will use this opportunity to stop my own presentation and move to the next presentation.